A blind girl was rejected by her parents due to her conditions, but what will happen will shock you. She was born in silence. Not because the world was quiet, but because the moment her mother saw her, she turned her face away. "She's blind," the nurse had whispered. The tiny baby girl, named Mirabelle, cried, but not for long. Her mother refused to touch her. Her father did not show up. And so began Mirabelle's life. Not in joy, but in rejection. As she grew, the world around her grew darker, not because she couldn't see, but because those around her refused to love her. Her mother treated her like a burden. Her father never spoke to her directly, and her two sisters, Diana and Grace, made sure she knew she didn't belong. "Why did you even come into this world?" Grace hissed one morning. "You're the shame of this family." "I wish you died at birth," Diana added. Mirabelle would sit in one corner of the house, hugging her knees, listening to their footsteps walk away. Every insult sank into her soul like cold rain. Nobody ever celebrated her birthday. Nobody taught her how to read in Braille. They left her hungry on some days and mocked her cries on others. Neighbors saw what happened, but nobody cared. "She's blind," they would whisper. "That one. Even her own parents don't like her." But Mirabelle had one thing they couldn't see: strength. Quiet strength. The kind of strength born from pain. At 25, she had never been to school, never been hugged, never heard anyone say, "I love you." She spent most days in the backyard, feeling the sun on her skin and praying for the one thing her heart craved: love, not pity, not help, just love. One day there was a loud knock on the gate. A royal chariot had arrived. People ran outside in excitement. Everyone wanted to see the prince. Prince Nathan had come to the village to choose a wife from among the daughters of Mr. and Mrs. Clark, Mirabelle's parents. Diana and Grace were dressed like queens there, faces painted and their smiles wide. They pushed Mirabelle into the kitchen, shouting, "Don't come out and embarrass us." But the prince didn't even glance at them. He heard something, a faint sound, a soft humming. It was Mirabelle sitting on the back step, singing to herself. He walked toward the sound and stood quietly. Then he spoke. "Who's there?" She froze. "My name is Mirabelle," she whispered. "And why are you sitting alone?" She hesitated. "Because I'm not welcome in my own house." When she turned her face towards him, he noticed her eyes, cloudy and still. He understood at once. She was blind, but she was honest and beautiful. That day, the whole village watched with shock as Prince Nathan ignored the sisters and asked for Mirabelle. Her parents laughed awkwardly. "Your Highness, maybe you didn't understand. She's blind," her father said almost mockingly. "I understand," the prince said calmly, "and I have made my choice." The gossip spread like wildfire. A blind girl? A prince and a blind girl? Impossible! But Nathan didn't care. He took Mirabelle with him. For the first time in her life, someone held her hand, not to push her away, but to pull her forward, and so began a new chapter for the girl they threw away. Mirabelle sat in the soft leather chair of the prince's royal doctor's office. For the first time in her life, someone brushed her hair gently and whispered, "You're safe now." She didn't know what safety felt like until then. Prince Nathan had taken her straight to the capital city. His palace was quiet, grand, and filled with kindness, something she had never known. Servants treated her with respect. The prince sat with her during meals, even feeding her at times. When she cried at night, he didn't ask her to stop. He simply sat there, holding her hand. The prince arranged for the best eye surgeon in the whole country. She was born blind, the doctor said after a long test. "But it's not permanent. There's hope." "Then do it," Prince Nathan said immediately. "She deserves to see the world." Mirabelle didn't speak much during those days. She didn't believe it yet. Her heart had been broken too many times. She thought it was another dream that would end in pain, but after the surgery, everything changed. She opened her eyes slowly one morning, blinking hard. The sunlight came in gently through the hospital window. She gasped, I can see." Her voice shook. A mirror was placed before her. For the first time, Mirabelle saw herself. She touched her face, her hair, and her lips. She saw Prince Nathan standing at the doorway, smiling with tears in his eyes. "You're beautiful," he said, and he meant it. For the first time she smiled, not the sad smile she wore back home, but a real one, a free one. Weeks passed. With Nathan's support, she started learning fast, how to read, how to use a computer, how to write. She was sharp. Her brain was like a sponge, soaking everything. She told the prince she wanted to study medicine. "You've suffered so much," he said. "That's why I want to help others," she replied, "especially those like me." He nodded. "Then you shall." He sent her abroad. For 6 years, Mirabelle studied medicine. She became one of the best. She walked across stages, collected awards, and gave speeches. People clapped for her. They respected her. They saw her. And Nathan? He waited, patiently, quietly, lovingly. When she returned, she was no longer the girl from the corner of the house. She was a woman, a doctor, a queen. Nathan married her in a quiet but elegant royal ceremony. Then, as a gift, he opened a modern hospital and named it Mirabelle Hope Hospital. She was now the chief medical director. Back in her village, her name became a mystery. People gossiped. She's alive? She's the owner of a hospital? She's the wife of the prince? Her parents grew restless. Their 2 daughters, Diana and Grace, had both married poor men. They struggled to feed their children. Mr. Clark had fallen sick. Mrs. Clark begged people for money. One day, they heard that Mirabelle was returning. They dressed up and rushed to the palace gate. They were shocked to see their once useless, blind girl step out of a royal car, tall, radiant, dressed in gold, eyes bright like the sun, their mouths hung open. "Mirabelle," her mother cried, falling to her knees, "we are sorry. Please forgive us." Mirabelle looked at them coldly. "I begged you all my life, for love, for food, for attention. You didn't hear me. Now that I've become someone, you remember I exist." Her voice didn't tremble. Her face didn't soften. They begged. They cried. But Mirabelle turned and walked away. No hug, no tears, no forgiveness, only justice. The news of Mirabelle's transformation spread like fire across the village. Women who once whispered behind her back now used her name with respect. Men who mocked her condition told their daughters to be like her. But none of it mattered to Mirabelle. She had buried the girl they once abused. The palace sent an official letter announcing the grand opening of Mirabelle Hope Hospital. Guests from all over the country were invited. The media buzzed. Health experts, royals and dignitaries lined up to witness the miracle woman who rose from dust. But in a small broken house near the village square, Mr. and Mrs. Clark sat with their 2 daughters, Diana and Grace. The silence in that room was loud. "She used to mop this floor with her tears," Diana said, staring at the cracked tiles. "She used to beg for food," Grace whispered. Mrs. Clark snapped. "If only we had known. Who knew the prince would choose her, a blind girl?" Mr. Clark coughed weakly in his corner. "We threw away a diamond because it had dust on it." That morning they dressed up and went to the hospital opening. They stood outside the gate with hundreds of villagers. When Mirabelle arrived, cameras clicked endlessly. She stepped out of her black SUV in a royal blue gown. Her skin glowed. Her eyes were clear, her poise unmatched. Prince Nathan walked beside her like a proud king. Her parents rushed forward and fell to their knees. "Mirabelle, please, we are your parents," her mother wailed. She looked at them with no emotion. "My parents." Her voice was low but firm. "I had no parents growing up, only owners who used me like a mop. Please, Mrs. Clark sobbed. "We were afraid. We didn't know better." Mirabel stared at her. "You didn't know how to feed your blind child? You didn't know how to hug her or treat her like a human?" "I regret it all," Mr. Clark said, struggling to rise from his chair. "Forgive us, just once." People were watching. Journalists pointed their cameras. The village chief looked on in shame. But Mirabel didn't care. She leaned down slightly and said clearly for all to hear, "I am not your daughter, not anymore." Gasps filled the air. "You let me rot in silence. You let my sisters insult me. You made me feel like death was a better option than life. But I lived. I survived without your love." Diana stepped forward. "Please, Mirabel, we're sisters." She turned to her coldly. "Sisters don't spit on each other's pain. You both made me feel worthless. Now watch me shine in worth." Diana broke into tears. Grace joined her. The three knelt, crying, begging. But Mirabel walked past them, her heels clicking against the ground like thunder. She gave her speech at the hospital opening with pride. She told the world about her journey, about the pain, the rejection, the silent suffering. She didn't hide her past. She used it as her fire. After the event, the palace guards gently led her family away. They waited for mercy that never came. Back at the palace that night, Prince Nathan held her hand. "Do you feel peace now?" he asked. "No," she whispered, "but I feel justice." And justice for her was enough. That evening, Mirabel sat by her window in the royal palace, watching the moonlight pour through the glass. Her life had shifted completely, yet her heart still felt heavy. Not from sadness, but from the weight of memories. For 25 years, the darkness in her life had not only been in her eyes, it was in the voices that tore her down, the hands that pushed her away, the cold night she spent crying quietly on the floor while her sisters laughed in the next room. But tonight, for the first time, she didn't feel like that helpless girl anymore. She stood from her chair and walked over to the mirror. The woman staring back at her was elegant, confident, unapologetic. This woman had survived. She remembered the time she sat in the backyard, holding her knees to her chest, praying that someone, anyone, would just love her. And now a prince had chosen her above all others. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from the hospital. "Emergency surgery successful, patient stable. Thank you, Dr. Mirabel." She smiled. She was saving lives now. The same girl who was once treated like a curse now had patients calling her a miracle. The people who laughed at her blindness were now sending her letters asking for hospital support. Old classmates who once mocked her wrote long apologies begging to be part of her projects. She ignored them all. She wasn't doing this for them. She was doing it for herself. And for every child born different and unwanted, she changed her will that week. She made it clear, not a single cent would go to her biological family. Instead, her wealth would fund scholarships for disabled children, health centers in poor areas, and homes for rejected girls. The only family she acknowledged now was Prince Nathan and the children they planned to have. Later that week, the village elders requested an audience. They came with gifts, singing her name, asking her to forgive her parents publicly for peace. "Let the past be buried," one elder pleaded, "so the village can heal." Mirabel stood up tall and composed. "Did the village speak when I was locked inside that kitchen? When I was beaten, insulted, and starved? They bowed their heads in shame. You want peace now that I've become someone. Where was your peace when I was treated like a dog?" No one could answer. She ended the meeting with one sentence. "You all watched me suffer and said nothing. I owe you nothing." That night she returned to her bed and laid down for the first time in her life. No tears came, no silent cries, no pain, just the soft rustle of her silk sheets and the warm breath of peace. She closed her eyes and smiled. Let The world beg. Let them regret. Let them cry. She had cried enough for a lifetime, and now she was done. The next month, the village square buzzed with shame and whispers. Nobody knew what to do with the truth. The same Mirabelle they once mocked had now become a national figure. Her name was on every magazine cover. Her story was shared on TV, titled "Blind Girl to Hospital CEO, the Woman Who Refused to Break." But the headlines didn't change anything for her parents. They were still locked out of her life. Mrs. Clark would sit by the old roadside, staring at cars passing, hoping one would stop and a guard would say, "Madam, your daughter wants to see you." It never happened. At night she cried in her broken kitchen, whispering to herself, maybe if I had hugged her once, maybe she would have loved me back. But Mirabelle didn't look back. She poured herself into her work. Her hospital had the best services. Patients flew in from different countries. She trained young doctors, mentored orphaned girls, and built a second hospital in another state. She named that one Grace Home Clinic, not after her sister, but after the grace she gave herself when no one else did. Meanwhile, Diana and Grace lived in pain. Their husbands were poor and bitter. Their children lacked food. One day, Diana came to the palace gate with her son. "He's sick," she cried. "He needs medical care." The guards informed the queen, but Mirabelle sent a message through her assistant. "There are many hospitals in this country. She can choose another one." Diana broke down in tears. "She's really gone. The Mirabelle we used to know is gone." Yes, she was gone. Gone was the blind girl who waited to be loved. Gone was the weak child they pushed into shadows. What remained was a woman they could never reach again. Prince Nathan watched all of this with quiet support. One evening he said gently, "You've done so much good even with all the pain. Don't you think it's time to let go of the anger?" Mirabelle turned to him with calm eyes. "Anger didn't build me, Nathan. Pain did. And pain reminds me of where I came from. I don't want to forget. But they're your blood," she smiled bitterly. "Blood doesn't make you family, love does, and they gave me none." He nodded. He didn't push her further. Later that week, Mr. Clark collapsed from illness. The village sent messages. The chief came personally to beg. "He is dying, Mirabelle," the old man said. "He wants to see you one last time." She sat in silence for a long time. Then she said, "Tell him I hope heaven treats him better than I did." The chief gasped. "You won't even see him?" She shook her head. "I already saw him for 25 years, and he never saw me once. Mr. Clark died that week. She didn't attend the funeral. She didn't send a message, not even flowers. She continued her work, continued her life. The world called her cold, but she wasn't cold. She was healed, and healing for her meant never going back." It was a quiet morning at Mirabelle Hope Hospital. The marble floors gleamed. Nurses moved with care. Patients waited patiently in line, whispering the same sentence over and over. "She's the doctor who was once blind." Inside her office, Mirabelle sat at her desk, reviewing a patient file. Her white coat bore her name, Dr. Mirabelle Clark Nathan. That name alone now opened doors across nations. She no longer needed to explain who she was. Her name carried weight. Her assistant knocked softly. "Your Highness, your mother is outside." Mirabelle paused, her pen frozen in her hand. "Which mother?" "Mrs. Clark." Silence. Then she stood up. "Let her in, alone." A moment later, Mrs. Clark walked in. Her wrapper was torn, her face sunken from sleepless nights. Her pride was gone, crushed under the feet of time. She knelt slowly on the hospital floor. "My daughter." "Don't call me that. Mrs." Clark bowed her head. "I just want to see you, touch you, say sorry." "You're seeing me now," Mirabelle replied calmly. "And you can't touch what you once threw away." Mrs. Clark began to weep. "I was wrong. I was afraid. I let shame make me cruel. Please forgive me." Mirabelle stepped forward. I begged you, remember? I asked for love, for food, for shelter. You called me a disgrace. Now you remember I'm your daughter because I have light in my eyes and gold in my name. I have nothing left, Mrs. Clark whispered. No home, no husband. My daughters blame me. Please, I have nothing. Mirabelle looked at her for a long time. Then we are finally equal, she said. Mrs. Clark broke into tears, crawling closer. Even if you can't forgive me, just help me survive. But Mirabelle's heart had learned a painful lesson. Not. Everyone deserves a second chance. You told me once I should have died at birth, she whispered. Now you're begging the same mouth you cursed to feed you. Mrs. Clark raised her hands. Please, no. Mirabelle cut in. I built myself from your rejection. I carried your insults like firewood. Now you want to warm your hands. By my fire? Guards appeared at the door. Escort her out, Mrs. Clark screamed. Don't do this, I'm your mother. Mirabelle stood tall. My mother died the day she watched her blind child crawl on the floor without helping. The door closed, and silence returned. Mirabelle walked to her window and looked at the sunrise. She remembered the words she used to whisper in the dark. Will anyone ever love me? The world had changed now. She was loved, respected, feared her. Parents? Forgotten. Her name? Enough. She turned back to her desk, picked up her pen and signed the next patient's form. With bold letters, Dr. Mirabelle Clark Nathan, Chief, Medical Director, because the girl they once called nobody had now become everything they could never touch, and she was never going back. The end.